have to say that one of my most favorite things about doing the Silvercore podcast is getting to meet some extraordinary people who are doing positive things, amazing things all over the world. And I get to learn from them, and I get to share that enthusiasm and their passion for what they do with you. A byproduct of doing the podcast is oftentimes I'll get invites to go and do some pretty cool things. Most often, I don't take people up on these invites, and my friends will rib me about it. They say, Travis, you gotta be a yes man. People would kill for these opportunities. Yes, I'd come out hunting with you. Yes, I'd come fishing with you. Yes, I'd come visit you in your neck of the world. And I'm starting to lean into that. I see a lot of value to going out and experiencing these adventures with other people in areas of the world that typically I wouldn't be going to, and sharing those experiences with you. Recently, Brad Brooks of Silvercore Podcast episodes 57 and episode number 73 put out a call inviting people to a barbecue that he's having at his place, Our Galley, in Boise, Idaho. And I thought, what the heck? It's only, 10 hours away by driving here from Lower Mainland, British Columbia? Jumped into the truck. Away I went. Let's do this barbecue. Had a great time. Got to meet some amazing people. There was some giveaways, great food, tacos, beer, and of course, Brad. It was really good to meet you in person. Of course, going down to Boise, I had to reach out to Zachary Hansen. He wrote the book Turning Feral, and he was in Silvercore Podcast episode number 94. Zachary says, of course, I'm on board. I'll meet you there. Unfortunately, there's a bit of mix-up on the dates, and Zach had welding school that evening. He says, don't worry about it. Tell you what, before I go to school the next day, 0630, let's meet at Merritt's Restaurant in Boise, world famous for its scones. As a Canadian, personally, I would call those donuts, but I would say they were world famous donuts. They were so good. Talking with Zach, he's got a new book coming out. I'm really excited to talk about it. I don't know if I'm allowed to yet, but when it does come out, I'm sure you're going to be hearing about it here on the Silvercore Podcast. I have a feeling it's going to be highly influential and it's going to make a big impact in the same way that books like Michael Easter's Comfort Crisis have made a pretty big impact on the world. Zachary says, Travis, I've written about Atlanta, Idaho in my book, Turning Feral. You got to check the place out. Population, 37 people currently. Here's the code to get in. Here's the Wi-Fi password. Go there, check out the sawtooths. You'll love it. In fact, there's some great fishing along the way. He lent me a 10 carat rod. I'd never 10 carat fished before, and for those who haven't heard of it, it's a collapsible fishing rod that they make, and it just pulls out into a pretty long rod, but it can basically fit in your pocket. It goes pretty small. It doesn't have a reel, and it's a different style, really easy to get the hang of this thing. I went out there, I was in the sawtooths, visions of Hemingway in the Sun Valley, fishing, and I can't remember a time when I've caught more fish or had a better day on the river than that. Almost every single cast I was catching. Beautiful rainbow trout. It was 40 degrees out, which is 104 if you're American. Smoking hot outside, cool water on my feet. And usually when you catch them in a lake, they can be a little bit muddy. These were fatty, river run, clean, crisp flavor. It was amazing. Top that all up. Hot springs in the evening, sit in the cold river, waterfall of hot water coming over my back. Had an amazing time down there. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is I'm going to be leaning into this. I'm going to take the advice of my friends who say, be a yes man. Yes, I'll go hunting with you. Yes, I'll take you up on your offer for this adventure. And I would encourage others that are listening to this to maybe stop, assess, and evaluate and look at the opportunities that you're getting. Where can you say yes? Where can you lean into these different adventures and opportunities that will inevitably present themselves to you? And how would your life be different if you took the route of just saying yes? If you're a member of the Silvercore Club, you should already know that we've got a number of different brand partners, one of which being Nanook, and they are a Canadian company that make robust cases for anything you can think of, different shapes and sizes, you get 30% off of their cases. That's a wicked savings. And if you're following us on social media, you'll see that we're going to be giving away one of these guys here. It's a Nanook T30 case. We're also going to be giving away the Nanook 990. That's a rifle case with foam. It's got the wheels. They're renowned for their latches, which won't open up unless you want them to open up, and in which case they open up really easily. Quality handles. I don't know what more I can say. Like if you've used it, you know they're good quality equipment. They'll keep your stuff safe. So follow us on social media. Follow Silvercore Outdoors. Subscribe to the podcast, and please, if you find value in these podcasts, share them with others. As we grow, we get more opportunities, and we're able to go out and interview interesting people all over the world, interact with them, and share that with you. So without further ado, let's get this one rolling. I love engaging with fellow entrepreneurs. They embark on uncharted paths filled with hard work and uncertainty, yet driven by an unmistakable passion for success. Today's guest embodies this spirit. With a deep love for hunting, cooking, and the outdoors, he has identified and capitalized on a gap in the marketplace for a nutrient-dense, grass-finished bison and beef meat snack, all while maintaining a commitment to quality and sustainability through his company, ManBar. Welcome to the Silvercore Podcast, Trevor Gibbs.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
There we go. So did I get that intro done right?
Sounds good, man.
Right on. So it's kind of fortuitous how we met. Now, you just flew into town last night.
Yes.
And coming from Texas there.
Texas, Austin, Texas.
The great
Yes,
state of Texas.
Absolutely.
I remember I was, maybe I don't want to admit this, but I was rollerblading from the ferry
There
terminal.
you go. All right.
When I was...
Please say last week.
No. I think it was about 19, 20 years old,
Okay.
and I thought I didn't have the... I don't know if my car wasn't working or if I didn't have money for fuel, but I wanted to go surfing. So I had to get to Tofino, and I'm like, I got a set of rollerblades. And I filled my backpack up, and I got off this ferry terminal. I figured I'm going to rollerblade from the Nanaimo ferry terminal or Duke Point, I think it was Duke Point ferry terminal over to Tofino. And that's a bit of a rollerblade.
All right.
And I remember my first big hill we're going down, and I was used to hills, but never the big backpack on.
Yeah.
And it was long and sustained. I'm going faster and faster and faster. I'm getting these wobbles in this thing. I'm like, oh, I got to get the brakes on, and I'm dragging the blade, and I'm dragging all the way down. I'm like, maybe I should take up hitchhiking. So I got this one guy, only person to pull over and pick up this, I think it was 6'6", probably 220-pound guy, scruffy looking, dirty backpack, all the rest. And man, he was massive. He made me look small, and he picks me and my buddy up, and he's gripping the steering wheel, and the whole steering wheel is flexing, and he's talking about coming from the great state of Texas.
Amazing.
He says, I spent some time in the great state of Texas. They got a great program down there, and by time it means he spent some time in jail. That was an interesting road trip. He was a demolitions expert, and he says, in the back I got all these explosives, and he's giving stories about putting blasting caps in people's lap, but they're duds, and lighting them and duct taping some guy up who was doing something with his wife, and like he was angry, massive, and a demolitions expert. So that was probably the first person that I had met from the great state of Texas.
And now you got me.
And now I got you.
That's a tough act to follow.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
You're a smart guy.
Thank you.
You come from an interesting background, but I want to get into everything you're doing with the ManBar and the business, but I want to know a bit about you first.
Sure. Yeah. Grew up in Austin. Was there through high school, and then obsessed with basketball when I was younger. Played a lot of team sports. But yeah, just was kind of in Austin doing my thing.
Yeah.
Finished high school, went to school in East Texas. And then I think kind of the summer after I graduated, I went to Europe, did the whole Euro trip thing.
Yeah.
Was over there for a few months, and I had studied engineering and math for my undergrad. And didn't really know what I was going to do. Went to Europe doing the backpacking thing, and then loved it. Really fell in love with. I had done some traveling beforehand, but that was my first like extensive 3-month, 4-month, however long I was going to travel. And so I kind of had the plan. I was just going to stay over there and find. At the time, maybe it was my youthful ignorance, but I was just like, I just got a degrees in physics and math. Like, I'll find something.
Oh, yeah, they'll hire me, no problem.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking for a mathematician or physicist.
Everyone's looking for that.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the plan. I was the initial phases of that, but then I found out I got into grad school.
Okay.
And so got into grad school at Texas A&M for engineering, for petroleum engineering. So I was sitting in, gosh, I don't even remember what country, but I was still in Europe, and I got this offer, basically go to grad school for free, and it was like, well, all right, worst case scenario, let me go do that for 2 years, and then I'll come back.
That's kind of hard to pass up.
Yeah, exactly. So I went back to Texas, did 2 semesters at A&M for grad school, and then was asked, myself and 2 other guys were asked to go kick off the grad program at their satellite campus in Qatar.
Oh, that's cool.
In the Middle East, yeah. And so I jumped on it because my whole, whether it was Europe or Middle East or whatever, I just wanted to work outside of the U.S. I wanted to see the world. That was kind of number one on my priority at that time.
What was pushing you? What was driving you?
I don't know.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't know. There was just a very... I was just fascinated by the world, by cultures, by languages, by food, by seeing something new.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it just took hold of me, and I don't know how, I'm not quite sure how else to articulate it, but it was just something that was very important to me. And so I saw that as an opportunity to go over there. If I did good work, potentially that would speed track me working overseas. And so I did. I went over there, and there were 3 of us. There were... The reason why is because they were only a few years old, and so they had all this. The Qatari National Research Foundation had funded a bunch of grad projects, but they were only, I think, the oldest people at the school were going into their junior year, so they needed a few people to go over there to kick it off, and so did that. Jumped on a project, was able to really help kickstart it because we were the first ones.
Yeah.
And so I nerded out on, what was my thesis? It was well placement optimization using genetic algorithms.
Well placement optimization. So we're talking like oil wells or water wells?
So oil and gas, yeah.
So oil well based on genetic
algorithms, which is essentially like a what's the best way? Like a self-learning algorithm almost, where the best way to think of a checkerboard or a chessboard, most times when you're running an optimization, let's say I don't even know how many squares are on a checkerboard. Let's say there's 100.
Sure.
Essentially what you're doing is each of those squares has different properties, porosity, permeability, whatever.
Yeah.
You've got to run basically run a project, not project, what's the word I'm looking for? You've got to run an iteration for each square.
Okay.
And so for that one, I'd have to run 100, and then at the end, I get 100 answers, and then that spits out ideally where the well placement would go.
Right. The best place to drill based on all these different factors.
Yeah. Based on all the, 10, 12, 15 different factors. And so what my program did and kind of the initial stages of it is how do we take that 100 iterations and make it 80 or 70?
Right.
Doesn't matter when it's that low of a number, but when it's not 100 and it's 1 million
Makes
or
a difference.
10 million, it's a big difference in time and energy and all of that. So
how would genetics play into that?
Well, that part is basically you assign multiple parameters for what you're looking for, and then it's basically running those iterations at random and kind of taking those answers to identify where, kind of whittle down to where the best option would be. And so, for example, if you've got that checkerboard, let's say the top right half, it's just getting bad answers, but down here it's getting higher answers. Well, it's going to start running a few more down here, and then it'll check. Maybe it'll kind of like Minesweeper. It's like, all right, that one, let me check these ones over here, and it just kind of whittles down to an answer. And so that it was able to, essentially do that. Instead of take those 100 iterations and make it 70 or 75, whatever it may be. So that was like the first part. That's what I did on like a 3 or 4 year project.
So here's the ADHD tangent for you.
Sure.
Okay. So I don't know much of anything about drilling for oil wells.
Sure.
But I know a very little bit about drilling for water.
Okay.
And people are trying to find the best spot to drill for water. And back in the day, they used to do divining or dowsing. Have you heard of this before?
Mm-mm.
Okay. They'd use, or witching stick. They'd take a switch from a willow tree and they'd walk around with that and see where it kind of wanted to dip down.
Okay.
Okay. I'm wondering, I know in the water drilling business, they still have people that'll come in and they'll do water dowsing or divining, and they'll walk around with their witching sticks, or they'll take a couple. I tried it when I was a kid. I took broom handles. I drilled a hole in the center. I just cut a couple chunks and I put a 90-degree coat hanger in it. And so you hold on these things, and when the coat hanger kind of crosses over, it comes back. I mean, like, it's sort of a Ouija board world of finding. I find it odd and interesting that people will still do that for water. Does that play any role, and I guess by the fact that you never even heard of this, any role into looking for oil?
Man, I'm sure in the early days there was some of that going on, but I'm unaware of that now.
Not what you and the other pros are doing.
I have never done that. We'll put it that way.
Oh, what a fun way to make a living, though, eh? Fair enough. Sorry, you go on.
That's all good. So it's went to grad school for that. Ended up graduating and was fortunate enough to get a job to stay over there. So caught the attention of a couple companies and ended up signing with a Danish company. And spent the next couple years between there, and I was living in Doha and Copenhagen. And and then between just the way our schedules worked, it's basically I would spend a third of my time in the office, a third of the time offshore, and then a third of my time I got off basically for the time on the rig. And so in that time off, I was in such an amazing location in the Middle East to get to within a 10-hour flight. I mean, you're in most of Asia, most of Africa, even into Europe. And you can just, you're so close to so much stuff. And so just anytime if I had 4 days off or more, I was on a plane going somewhere.
Really?
And so I spent quite a few years of just almost like every 3 weeks, I was either in Doha, I was in the office, or I was traveling somewhere that I hadn't been before. And that was just my life in it, and I loved it, and it was great. And
it's quite the adventure, eh?
Yeah. Maybe that's what you asked earlier. Maybe that's what I was seeking.
Everyone's got this different. They talk about the travel bug. They've been bitten by the travel bug, and they want to go check things out. I remember, so I turned 20 in Greece. I was in one of the Greek islands. And
beautiful.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It was great. But the thing that I found, I was spent about 3-4 months over there, like yourself, around that age, got out of high school and had plans to do one thing that didn't pan out. And so I thought, well, I got this money saved up. I'm already over here. Let's travel around a bit. But the one thing that really struck me was how I was raised in a certain way, and there's a right way to do things, and the people that don't do it that way, they're doing it wrong.
Sure.
I was struck to see all the people doing it the wrong way, and I'm using air brackets here for people listening, and thriving and doing so well. And that really just was a bit of an aha moment. And everything I'd known up until that point, it's like, wait a minute, there's a lot more going on out here. And it really ignited that curiosity in me about different cultures, different traditions, different ways that people do. And for me, that all kind of revolved around food and the people.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have much money. I had enough to get up and get over there. So I would sleep on beaches, or sorry to say it, I nicked a tarp out in Austria. I made a little bit of a tent out of it, and slept under that for a while, for a week or so up in the Alps. And but I would use my money to buy decent food and try to find interest, like get away from the tourist zones and try and find people that are doing just a regular life, which again was the wrong way of doing it from the way that I was raised, but they're thriving. So I loved that aspect. For me, that's where a lot of the adventure kind of came in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that resonates for sure. Yeah, it was just kind of to touch on both of the food and the people. I mean, a story that comes to mind is I took my mom to Sri Lanka.
Oh, yeah?
When I was over there. And we went, and literally the first place we ate, I think, because we're in a small village, and the manager came up to us and was asking us, like, kind of, what are y'all two doing here? But in a polite way.
Sure, of course.
And so, it just, kind of long story short, just worked out that we were going to be where he was from at the same time he was getting off work and going home, because he was, he was working away from home and then would work for 3, 4, 5 days and then go home for, 3, 4, 5 days. And so we just happened to be going to be in the same place those days. And so he invited us to come to his home for dinner. And, and so we went, and we just this man we'd never met before. He invited us to his house. They cooked this equivalent of just this monster, like, Thanksgiving dinner. I guess you don't have Thanksgiving up here, but.
Yeah, we got it in Canada.
Okay.
We got Thanksgiving.
Okay, all right.
We have it on a different day, but we got a Thanksgiving.
All right.
Yeah,
but, just this crazy spread of all this homemade Sri Lankan food, and his wife and his daughter had been, like, cooking literally all day over wood fire stoves and stuff like that. And it was just, I turned to my mom and I was just like, remember this, because this doesn't happen often, and, like, this is incredible, and it was just, we're two normal people. They were a normal family, and it was amazing.
And you probably never really see that in Texas, do you? People saying, hey, where are you from? Where are you going to? Why don't you come over to my house? Happens once in a while, but not the most common.
Texas is pretty friendly, man. It's there's this whole Southern hospitality thing. It probably not like that.
Okay.
Where it's just some random person that you grab, and say, hey, you come over for dinner. But
so here in Vancouver and Canada, we've got this reputation for being super friendly, and I'll tell you, that sort of thing doesn't really happen over here.
Sure.
I know traveling, it happens a fair bit.
Sure.
And when I was younger, I'd always have, like, what does this person want? What do they want from him?
Okay.
Like, I was traveling by myself, and people are like, oh, where are you staying?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm, staying over here. Why do you come to my place? No, right? Like, what does this person want? But the number of times people would invite you to stay over, invite you. I remember when I came down from the mountainside that I was camping in for a little over a week, and figured I'd live off the land up there for a while, and just starved, essentially.
Yeah. Practiced your fasting.
Exactly. Practiced my fasting, and I must have stunk and looked terrible.
Sure.
And so I come back down, I returned the tarp, so the person was only deprived of it temporarily.
Yeah.
And this husband and wife come on down, and they see me, and I'm catching a bus out. Oh, where are you going? And tell them where I'm going to go, and why don't you come and get food with us? We'll go over. We'll get a pizza. I'm like, no. I don't want you paying for anything, right? And, no. We'll get it for you. I says, no, this is the last bus. I got to get out. They walk away. They come back. Okay, we got it figured out. You'll stay with us. We'll get some food.
Nice.
And the number of times I've found that in life to happen, when you kind of put yourself out there,
Sure.
it is, and maybe that's it. Maybe in your hometown, you're not putting yourself out there. Maybe it does happen for other people. But there's an interesting energy to things that I think people can kind of pick up on, and maybe that's amplified when you're traveling.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. It's there's certainly an openness to newness.
Newness, yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite, I always say one of my favorite feelings in the world is I travel a little differently, and normally when I'm doing stuff like that, I typically don't pre-plan like where I'm going to stay or any of that. And so I really fell in love with just showing up to a new place, having no idea what I was going to do, where I was going to stay, any of that, and just this quote unquote figuring it out.
Yeah, because the universe will unfold as it should.
Yeah, and so it was a lot of travel is that way, and for me, and there's something to it, and maybe it's a skill that you can get better at and chip away at, but I think that adaptability to be open and accept kind of whatever it is.
Well, that's a huge thing for an entrepreneur
Sure.
to be able to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Did traveling kind of hone that in you, or did it kind of spark that in you? Like, did you always have that adaptable nature, or did you kind of find it?
That's probably a better question for my mom. But
well, where is she?
Yeah, should have brought her.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it came very naturally.
Yeah.
So maybe it was there, and I was just in a place where that made sense. But yeah, I mean, in general, and I've never really thought about it, but maybe it does come from the travel. But like in general, I do, whether it's emotionally or whatever, part of it, that adaptability and just being open to things going wrong or not being exactly how you want, or I've kind of feel like in a lot of ways I've removed myself from, what's the word? Being process oriented versus outcome oriented.
Okay.
And so
So explain that. Like, how would that work in your life, being process oriented as opposed to outcome oriented?
well, I mean, a big one is with these sticks, which we can dive into later.
Well, I can dive in.
Yeah,
now.
we can dive into it now. So, I would just say that I don't view. So I've been working on this company for call it 2 years.
Okay.
We just launched, like Monday, from when we're talking, just a few days ago, I sent out all the initial orders.
Right.
And so it's very new. But my thought process through these last 2 years and even going forward, the success of this company or the outcome of this company, I haven't really thought about in terms of like dollars, for example. I've got, like I can't tell you I want to be a $5 million company, a $50 million, whatever. Like that to me isn't really how I define success with this.
How do you define success?
Well, so far the success has been I've formulated, created, whatever you want to call it, something that scratched my own itch that I think is, and the feedback I've been getting and a lot that people agree with is it's the best tasting stick on the market. Excuse me. But yeah, scratched an itch of just wanting all the things I wanted in a meat stick, which we can go into. But as long as I can keep the quality what it is, as long as I can continue to support people, which is really like, if there was one word through all this, it would be support. And that I realized as I was making this that like we were talking about earlier, I hate being the center of attention.
Yeah, I was wondering when this is going to come up.
But, it's like there's only so much you can say about a stick, even though I think this one's great and it's got a bunch of really cool features and benefits that we can talk about. But really the way that this thing's going to be used is supporting people like you when you're going out in the woods and you're teaching people. It's going to support my buddies who are real estate agents who are zipping all around town. It's going to help my friends who are single mothers or new mothers who need a snack both for them and their kid when they're running them around. It's for my buddy Blake, who is always in the outdoors. It's for me when I'm hunting. It's for, it's all these applications where people are doing hard, interesting things and taking pride in their work. And just if they can have this and do that for 30 minutes longer or a couple hours longer or whatever it may be, like that's what makes me happy. And so as long as I can obviously not go bankrupt or, I need to create a successful company. Sure. I'm not, and certainly the physics and engineering me, like it likes to nerd out on the numbers.
Yeah, that's something, and all my engineer buddies, they'll tell me, it's sort of a curse in the engineer world. Sure. They'll nickel and dime you to death because they're looking at numbers left and right.
To that though, it's like certainly I'm on top of the numbers.
Yeah.
But I think where the difference comes in is because there's not like a number that I'm chasing. It also allows me to do, like, do you have those sticks I got you? So like for this, it makes no sense to spend money on butcher paper and twine and this compostable sticker and the compostable mailer we put it in. Those are all pretty, there's cheaper ways to do it.
Yeah.
But this has a different feel to it.
100%.
And I've had, a lot of people that I've given these to just in the last couple days. They grab it and they're like, "Oh man, this feels like this is cool. I just feel like I came back from the butcher."
That's right.
And now I don't know what that means from a monetary standpoint, but I know there's value in that.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Like I don't know how to put that saying in a spreadsheet of like, this is why I'm doing it because that guy says that he really loves it because it feels like he came from the butcher.
Well, it's important to have a feeling associated with a product. You know Simon Sinek, have you seen or heard of him?
I'm familiar with him.
Okay, so I remember back in the day, there's a YouTube video, I think it was a TED Talk he was given or a lecture he's given on the golden circle he talks about.
Okay.
And he says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, or
Gotcha.
They don't buy what it is. And he gives a number of examples, right? And he talks about like Apple computers. Apple doesn't say, hey, we got the fastest processor, we got the brightest monitor, we got the ABC. It says, we'll help you unleash your creativity.
Sure.
You're unique, right? There's something that people want to identify with when they're engaging in a product or a service, right? Yeah. There's always going to be those who will go for the absolute cheapest thing that they can find.
Sure.
But I think if you want a sustainable product or service, there should be an ethos behind it that speaks to the individual, because that'll drive you as an entrepreneur. That'll keep you striving to ensure that you're putting out the best quality product and that you're innovating and doing things in a way. And the people who subscribe to that will pay for that because they want to know that they're getting something that has that heart and soul behind it. And it's not just some mass-produced thing that's been pumped out, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's trying to, even though it doesn't make economic sense or even, time, resource sense, time, energy, money to do it, it does from a monetary standpoint, from a feeling, energy, vibe, enjoyment aspect, absolutely.
I think there's a bit of a toss-up there too, right?
Sure.
So obviously profit's got to be an important piece of the puzzle.
Sure, yeah.
If you want to have something that's sustainable over the long term, it has to have enough revenue coming in order to sustain that, right? That's a very important piece. And quite often we find ourselves like with subscription model type services, which by the way, you should have a ManBar subscription model.
We've on the website, we've got a monthly option there. So
you look at like Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a pretty cool thing. You get free shipping. That's not too bad. Prime membership for a year. If I buy X amount of stuff, I get free shipping back. And then they bring in upgrades and they say, well, now we've got music too, and we've got TV, and we've got cloud storage space, and it gets bigger and bigger, and it's all the same price.
Yeah.
And then the money starts to, like the service, everything looks fantastic. And then the shareholders start getting in, and everyone says, well, how do we squeeze a bit more money out of it?
Yeah.
Well, now the TV's got ads, and now you've got to get different subscriptions to Crave and Hulu and all the rest under it. So there seems to be a bit of a life cycle to these things. And the bigger it gets, it kind of kills that.
The soul of
it, right?
Yeah.
And this right now is the soul of it. This is you. And if you're able to sustain that soul, I think that model of always pursuing excellence, because that's an abstract thought that's probably never going to be able to be achieved, but you can always pursue it. Money is going to be a natural byproduct of your hard work and efforts.
I think so too. I mean, and that's kind of the way I've been approaching it, and hopefully we'll continue to approach it for as long as we're around.
Yeah, and that's how I've looked at things, and maybe it's worked out, maybe it hasn't. I don't know. I don't look at the money, right? But it seems to be working out. I do get people lecturing me, saying I should be looking at the money more, and I should really have spreadsheets out. And it's just that's not where my head's at. That's not where and I find that by creating a quality product and engaging with the end user and others around you in a meaningful way, it keeps me interested. And if it was just the money, I'd be bored.
Yeah. Yeah, I always like, God, who was he talking to? Dave Chappelle did an interview forever ago, and he was talking about telling his dad that he wanted to be a comedian. And, his dad's response was kind of the typical, like, well, you do something else, have some other skill as a backup. Not many people make it. It's hard, blah, blah, blah. And Chappelle's response to that was like, because I think again, I may be messing up some details, but I think his father was a teacher, and Chappelle was like, well, how much do you make as a teacher? And at the time it was like, let's say $30,000.
Sure.
And Dave Chappelle was like, all right, well, if I can make $30,000 a year, but doing what I love, then isn't that making it?
Yeah.
And his dad was like, keep that attitude and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so a bit of it is, to bring that to this, obviously we're going to give this thing our best shot. I hope it blows up. Great. But if I can keep doing this and I can make, let's say, $30,000 a year from it, but I'm meeting people like you, going to talk with Kelsey, who I've met, like the amount of networking I've been able to do prior to even having a launched product makes me very optimistic for what the next 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years looks like. And so it's, if it's only ever $30,000 and I'm doing this on the weekends, or, going on cool hunting trips or fishing trips, or just meeting, I told you some of our plans, at the end of the month. I'm hoping to do a big wild hog cook-off launch party down in Austin. Like, if I can do that stuff and again support what other people are doing, and people find genuine utility using this, I mean, that's awesome. So
when are you doing this cook-off? It'll be after this is released, but
so we're in July. Yeah, the idea is for it to be the end of July. So next week, when I go home, we're going to start shooting the first episodes of the right now what I'm calling the First Hunt series.
Yeah.
And that will be my version of a podcast, where it's kind of rigging out my truck to be a mobile podcast studio, and essentially going to take people on their first hunts, which in Texas, it's kind of like a 101 first entry idea, where there's so many entrepreneurs and not just entrepreneurs, but just people that talk to me about hunting and how to get started, where basically just going to take them. If they need to go to the gun range, we'll go to the gun range, get some lessons in, and then just going to go sit in a blind and hunt wild pigs, because that's kind of the easiest barrier to entry, especially down in Texas.
Being an invasive species,
yes,
the wild pigs there. So good old Razzle Dazzle Rick Brazzle, he's got a organization called the First Hunt Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And he takes out kids. Basically, it's kids who've, most people will get into hunting because of a family member traditionally it's been male dominated, so father, uncle, but a lot of mothers out there hunting too, and he'll take people who've never been out, who've never hunted, and they'll help them get started on their sort of first hunt. So they got
Cool.
the First Hunt Foundation. Might be an interesting guy to reach out to on
Yeah,
all of this
no,
as well,
that's
honestly.
I wasn't aware of that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
The Texas Parks and Wildlife has they call it Stewards of the Wild,
Okay.
and it's a similar thing where it's basically a group that you can sign up for, and they offer hunting trips, fishing trips, all sorts of stuff where they assign you a mentor, and yeah, you'll go out and basically learn how to do these things. So.
Well, that's one of the things that's sorely missing in the hunting community is easy access to mentors. Like if you don't know somebody, like what are you going to do? Get on an online forum and start asking people? Good luck with that, right?
Yeah.
You're just going to get flamed. I know some people, they're like, I'll change my name, some guy. I'm going to change my name to Jen. I'll put an attractive looking girl and I'll ask all my questions to that one.
That's funny.
Other people will go on hiking forums and say, "Oh, I'm really looking to find a XYZ animal, right? Has anyone seen one in their hikes, right?" And finding that they're a little less tight-lipped about sharing it. But in British Columbia, we don't have a dedicated sort of mentorship program or steward program. And I know in Washington, they've got a program where if you're a qualified individual, you've passed the, in Canada, we call them an enhanced reliability check, which is done by the RCMP. But basically, it's the PERV check. Make sure you're going to be a decent person to take other people out, right? And so in Washington, these guys will take others out and mentor them hunting. And as a reward for that, the following year, they have increased odds for their limited entry hunting. And I've pushed our province to enact something similar. Government moves really slow, but it's something that I've been working on trying to get over in BC. And in fact, Rick Brazel, talking with him about those sort of things. But that might also be, I don't know how the steward program works. In BC, one of the concerns is, are you a guide now? And does this step on the guide outfitters? And is this guided hunting? But in Texas, being a feral animal, I don't think you're running into those sort of problems.
Well, it's not just with, a couple of things. It's not just with pigs that they're doing it. Texas is a unique place in that we have a lot of non-native animals there, and we're also like, I forget the number, but it's like it's not 100% private land, but it's pretty up high there. And so the way they work is they actually work with different like private ranches that allow them to come on and or either ranches or can't think today, like state park. Yeah, thank you. Geez, state parks.
All good.
And that stuff. So they actually work with them, and so they're allowed to come on, and the landowner will give them like, all right, you can take X amount of these animals, X number of does, X number of spikes, X number of males, whatever it may be.
Okay.
And so it's a pretty, probably a somewhat unique scenario down there.
Oh, it sounds properly managed.
It's great.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Up here, we had one of our local islands has got some invasive deer that they figured they want to cull. And rather than putting that out to hunters who've all volunteered to do it for free and putting meat on the tables or reaching out to First Nation groups or whatever it might be, they spend millions of dollars and they get people from out of country. It's a group from New Zealand, and they fly around in helicopters while the other ones on the ground use dogs to drive these things out and shoot them. It's crazy the amount of money that's spent. And
so that exact scenario was happening on a ranch in South Texas, or not a former ranch that's now was donated and now is going to be like a state park.
Okay.
Well, they had
the feral hogs.
No, had like actual like what was it? It wasn't Nilgai. It was, I can't remember, but big animal. Not elk, not Nilgai. It was what was it? It was certain kind of deer. But anyways, they wanted them off because they wanted to make room for more of the native whitetail population. But the way that they're going about it is that some of these stewards of the wilds draws, they were allowing people from there to come on and hunt. But then they were also giving out during hunting season and draw season. They were giving out draws for these animals on this particular area.
Okay.
And so their plan is over the next 3 years or so to hopefully have them all off. But they're doing it that way, and so it just seems like a way better approach. And way cheaper.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everyone, right?
They'll actually make money from doing this rather than spending all that.
Fancy that. So
weird concept.
When I'm out hunting,
yeah,
or in the backcountry, or hiking, or whatever, I'm not in my kitchen.
Right.
I'm outside, right?
Right.
I am drawn to nuts. I'm drawn to meats. I'm drawn to cheeses.
Okay.
Those are the things that I really crave. Sweets, I always figured, I want some sweets. When I'm spending time in the backcountry, I want hydration, I want salt, right? And if I'm not preparing, if we're not making our own stuff to bring on out, and I'm going to the gas station and getting a gas station Slim Jim or something, I'm not feeling good afterwards after eating something like that.
Yeah.
What makes yours different than some of those gas station meats that you see?
A few things. So one is the quality of the meat is really good. We're solely at this point in time, and I hope forever, only sourcing from regenerative ranches in the U.S. That's a whole. We can go on that side tangent later about regenerative agriculture, but a big thing is the way we ferment it, and also the fat content.
Okay.
And so we've got 17 grams of fat in this stick.
Okay.
And I formulated it that way for a reason, for exactly what you just said, of thinking of the times when I'm doing the most active things I do and am the most tired, whether it's hunting or snowboarding or rock climbing or just surf, like all the stuff I like, all the activities, me and my buddies like to do. And so you want the fat, you want the high calories.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're as big as they are. There's over 210 calories per stick.
Nice.
17 grams of fat. And so I wanted that satiating part of it. And that came from the meat and nut diet, which comes from the training world, which is it's basically the meat and nut breakfast, not the meat and nut diet. But it was this guy, Charles Poliquin, kind of made famous this meat and nut breakfast because it was the most satiating for his athletes. It made them the most mentally acute. And so there's just all these benefits to it. And so I was actually making a different product. I was making a meat and nut bar. It was a bison and almond bar. And that's where the name came from, because I was going to have like a line of different meat and nut bars.
ManBar, meat and nut bar.
Yeah,
there
so
you go.
That's where it originally came from.
Okay, so you're not specifically marketing towards men.
No.
Gotcha.
Obviously, it will turn into that, which is we can chat about that too. But yeah, so that's where it originally came from, and so there were some issues with the nuts on the production side, and so I replaced the nuts with beef fat.
Right. Okay.
So that's how we got there, and then on the fermentation side, which I think is really the bigger difference, is we use a starter culture made from beets, the vegetable.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an old school way of doing it, but you're basically using the sugars in that to ferment the meat. That produces a kind of full spectrum of the lactic acids that you need for fermentation. And it's just like a healthier, cleaner, more expensive approach to doing it. But the difference is most sticks on the market, just about all of them, use an encapsulated acid, either an encapsulated lactic acid or an encapsulated citric acid. Those are typically an isolated or synthetic version of, let's say, the lactic acid.
Okay.
And then the hydrogenated part is basically the hydrogenated oil it's a way to make the oil a solid at room temperature, and then as the temperature increases, it melts into a liquid. And so you use those because A, they're cheap, B, they're super stable. It's pretty easy to get if you're making beer, kombucha, every batch is going to be a hair different.
Right.
These allow for kind of that variability to be greatly reduced, the encapsulated acids.
Got it.
So what happens is you mix them up with the meat, you start cooking them. As it's cooking, the hydrogenated oil melts, exposing the acid to the meat, and then the fermentation process can start. Well, that oil doesn't evaporate. It goes into the meat.
Right.
And that oil is, we're not talking about a tallow or a pork lard. We're usually talking about some sort of vegetable,
something really good for you.
Motor oil, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that goes into the meat, and that's why I think so many people have, the taste of most sticks aren't very, kind of the perspective on sticks for me and all my buddies has always been, I want something. I don't want to house a bag of Doritos or like M&Ms. Like, I want the protein. Here's a convenient, easy way to get protein. It's never an enjoyable thing. It's never let me eat this stick because it's so delicious.
Right.
So there's that, but those oils and that encapsulated acid, I think, is why you get that rubbery.
That's it. Yeah.
Not food tasting taste.
Okay.
Excuse me. And so, yeah, so that's the encapsulated acid part, which is what most sticks do, and why we didn't go with that is because I wanted a healthier version. That starter culture allows me to carry a little more moisture. Like, I know you haven't had one yet, but
not yet.
When you bite into it, it's almost more sausage-like than the dry stick that you're used to. So it allows me to carry a little more moisture, which in turn allows me to carry more fat. And so that's why we're able to have like 17 grams of fat in ours, whereas most sticks are nowhere close to that.
So I love fat. A lot of flavor in fat, a lot of energy in fat, but there's going to be a large camp of people out there that say fat's bad.
Sure.
What would you say to that?
I would say that, I don't want to answer this. I would say they're wrong, depending on where the source of the fat comes from. Okay. Obviously, that's a big one. Okay. Animal fats, especially high quality animal fats, they're phenomenal for you. There's I don't know what else to say aside from that. It's like they're not bad for you. For people who don't want to hear that, then the quick answer is they probably won't be a customer.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it's certainly, I understand the people that obviously, like the keto crowd, the paleo crowd, the carnivore crowd, all those men and women get it. For people outside of that, I think it's just going to be an education thing, right. Especially as we grow and are able to talk about that a little more. I think there's opportunities just to show people that high quality animal fats are good for you, and you actually want them. They're good for not only physically but for your brain, and the satiating part of food typically comes from fat.
Okay.
And so, like, for example, right now I'm probably 205. What are y'all, kilograms here?
I know we do pounds.
Okay,
we go back and forth over everything.
So I'm a little over 200 pounds. This morning, because I'm traveling, I ate one of these and a small handful of pistachios. Yeah. And that was, what time is it? 11? That was 4 or 5 hours ago, and I'm
going strong.
Totally fine. And so it's that satiating part counterintuitively allows you to eat less so that you're volume-wise you're eating less, but nutritionally you're still getting everything you need. And that's where that meat and nut breakfast that I talked about earlier, that's another reason he had it, because you don't have to gorge yourself or stuff yourself with all this food to get the benefits of it. His athletes could eat small handful of meat, small handful of nuts, and be good to go for a several-hour training session, not only physically, but more importantly, mentally.
Gotcha.
Because there's all these, in meat, in really that protein and fat combo, targets neurotransmitters that are most associated with drive, energy, and focus. And so that's why, you know, that's the difference between eating meat and nuts or, you know, just high quality proteins and fats, where you're feeling a little more energetic, you're feeling mentally clear, versus the opposite. You know, let's say the stereotype, go eat a big bowl of bread or spaghetti or carbs, whatever, and, you know, and then you get that brain drain in the afternoon where you feel like you need a nap. So there's like reasons for that and science behind it, and so it's targeting neurotransmitters that do a lot of good for you, and so that drive, energy, and focus piece is also relative to just kind of the type of people that we want to market to and that we want to support. Just again, kind of people who are putting their head down, doing good work, taking pride in their work, doing cool stuff, going out in the outdoors, building beautiful things, like whatever it may be. So.
I read somewhere that the whole fat idea, the fat is bad idea, was something that was perpetuated by the food industry. That was a multi-billion-dollar essentially cover-up.
At least, yeah.
At least billion, trillion, right? Yeah. What was it? Sugar? Sugar is supposed to be the really bad one, but it was fat that was actually really good for you, and people should be getting the fat. No, it was because of the oils. It was the
canola oil, right? The vegetable oil, that stuff.
Yeah, so they're saying, you got to have these things because this fat, this lard, this butter, it's going to kill you. But you have our homemade oils here.
The foods, I mean, the food system is pretty broken and has been for a while. And even how do I say it? The sources of things matter. So do you have those mangoes? Yeah. So this is a really good example. You know, this is my buddy's mango company, Mangones. It's a one ingredient product. It's just mangoes. There's plenty of sugar in here, but the sugar is all from the fruit.
Yeah.
And so there's no need to add sugar to that. And so even sugar, when we just kind of make a blanket statement of sugar is bad, which generally I agree with when you're talking about all of these like ultra processed,
right?
You know, like your bag of M&Ms, which I love M&Ms, by the way, not hating on them, but it's just very different than eating several of these, which again also have sugar and also have a purpose, but that to me is, especially when you're using it when you're out doing hard, difficult, interesting things. Most of your problems go away when you're working hard, I feel like, or you're doing hard things.
They tend to, because you're in the moment. You're concentrating on what needs to be done.
Well, not only that, but even from like a nutritional standpoint,
I see.
It's like your body will crave. If your body's craving sugar, eat a bunch of fruit.
Yeah.
You know, and that will go away. It's like it's not that you're bad or your body's bad. It's just your body's craving this thing. Give it to it. Just choose as good of a source as you can. And so that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, that whole idea of the broken food system, and I agree, like 1,000%. I think the butcher paper wrapped with twine packaging speaks to that as well, right? That speaks to the individual who would like to have something a bit more farm to table, something that's not fake, right? Something that's been like real food, something that's created well. And there's been plenty of documentaries of like, why are North Americans obese when Europeans, and of course now Europeans are suffering some obesity issues as well, but traditionally they're eating tons, they're drinking tons, and they're not putting it on the weight. It's because they're not eating all this highly processed food traditionally. They're eating things that they're good, real food.
Yeah, I mean, even their, you know, the gluten in their bread is a different thing than what what we've got.
Yeah.
And they're also walking. Who
That
knows,
helps, eh?
10, 20,000 steps a day, I would guess.
Yeah, it does help.
And so it's all of it. It's never, we're complicated beings. Like, it's never one thing.
So are you going to be, when you're talking about marketing, you're going to be leaning into the whole ManBar, the meat and nut, but the ManBar aspect of it?
Not in the, I'm very uninterested in all the, like, man versus woman, male versus female stuff. That it's a very uninteresting conversation to me. I think I get it. I get that it garners attention. I get that. I agree that there are differences, but I don't think that it needs to. How do I say this? I don't know. I guess I just don't see the point of it. So with ManBar, with the name, obviously that elicits
some sort of
it
imagery.
elicits something.
Sure.
And so I will say that the reason I kept the name, even though I changed the product, was because overwhelmingly the response has been extremely positive from both men and women. I would say, I just talked all that crap about knowing all my numbers, but I would say I would guess probably somewhere 30-ish% of people who have ordered have been women.
Yeah, okay.
And so I'm not getting, on a mass scale, I'm not getting like a lot of negative pushback. Well, there have been some negative comments, which we can touch on in a minute, but to your question, I'm leaning in with the branding and the marketing. I'm leaning into, certainly it will resonate with men. I think it will resonate. The hope is that the message, even if certain women don't want to eat it, hopefully they resonate with the message and want to buy it, see it as a positive, and want to buy it for the men in their lives.
Sure.
And so, yeah.
It was a woman who referred you over here.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. Kelsey's a perfect example.
Yeah.
And so that's the goal with the branding and marketing. Certainly, of course, there's probably going to be a higher percentage of male-focused marketing, just because that's typically how it works with the people who are hunting, fishing, rock climbing, all that. It's not to be exclude anyone, exclude women, but just by the nature of the numbers and the percentages of who's doing these things, sure.
So I was talking to Griff yesterday. He's a ex-Army Ranger and started a company called Combat Flip-Flops, right?
Okay.
And so I guess, flip-flops, a little part that your foot slides into a sole, and that part, if you're running around, can rip out at times, right? So their whole slogan is, we don't pull out. Combat flip-flops, right? And
awesome.
He just leans into all of this parody stuff, all this. And when ManBar came up, I'm like, I wonder if he's going to take the same approach as Griff. I'd be like, you could have a heyday with what you're doing here.
You certainly can. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to not have fun with it. I don't know what that looks like, and it's certainly not going to be, it will be to make people laugh, not to, I'll say the people who are drawn to us already, someone's always going to be angry about something.
You got it.
Like I said, I've gotten a few negative interactions because of the name, but whatever. Like it doesn't. I don't lose sleep at night because of it, because I know, I'm not out here to try and rile anyone up, or I'm not. I know that I'm not. My favorite people in the world are women. My mom, my sister, my girlfriend. Like, it's like I'm not gonna do anything to embarrass them or anything like that. So
you're not gonna be able to please everybody, but
no, exactly.
So regenerative farming.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Educate me.
Sure. So regenerative agriculture is very exciting, and this is my way, because I don't own land. I don't have a ranch. Not yet. Hopefully one day I will. But it's a land management principles that people are using to that goes way above and beyond organic. And so it's basically mimicking nature. It's working with nature is kind of the taglines of it. And the way you do that, the examples that are always used are, before fences were up in the U.S. or really anywhere, animals were just moving freely.
Sure.
And so, we use the example of like all the bison that were in North America and them going up and down the plains, but they were constantly moving. But with those, there were birds that were following them. There were wolves that were following them. There were other animals that were around. And so essentially it comes down to diversity. And so how can we mimic nature, put the most amount of diversity on a plot of land, and just kind of let nature do its thing? And so the way they're doing that, obviously, that ranches aren't big. People aren't going to take down their fences, and most ranches aren't big enough. So back to that checkerboard, kind of this, funny enough, kind of goes back to the grad school thing. You take that checkerboard, let's say you've got a square ranch. Well, instead of just having one big square where you're letting your cattle or your bison or your goat, sheep, whatever, just roam around all day, and to where there's an animal, in theory, an animal in each square all the time. Maybe the animals change, but an animal.
Right.
So what this does is it takes all those animals and puts them in one square or four squares.
Sure.
Whatever makes sense based on the size. So you're putting the whole herd together, basically just stressing the crap out of those, let's call it 4 squares, and then moving them off those squares and going to the next 4.
Got it.
And going to the next 4 and the next 4 and the next 4. And what that does is the same way, like I always use the example of like training. We go do a leg day today, we hit it hard, we're going to stress the crap out of our legs. We're going to be walking funny tomorrow. Maybe in 3, 4, 5 days, depending on how hard we get after it, maybe we'll be like, all right, time for another one. So It's that same idea, but that rest period over these next 5 days or whatever is where all the good stuff happens. It's where we stress the crap out of our legs. Now the repair, the growth, then we come back a little bit stronger. So same idea with the land, so that stress the land. They're trampling the plants. They're trampling the soil. They're eating part of the grass. They're urinating. They're defecating. They're doing all these things on that land, and then get them off and then let the land rest and repair.
Got it.
And so it's basically doing that over and over and over and over. And then you can add, what they're seeing with that is they're starting to see more of the natural grasses in that area, depending on where you are. And then as you add more animals to that, like there's plenty of ranchers that are now messing with what they're calling flirds.
A flird?
Instead of a flock or a herd.
So you got a flird, got it.
Yeah, so they're basically putting animals together. And so it's like maybe it's your herd of cattle and your flock of sheep. Well, let's just put them in because the sheep will eat what the cattle don't. The cattle will eat what the sheep don't. They'll be the end host for each other's parasites. And now we're getting more birds that come in, so they're eating a lot of the flies.
Interesting.
With that, you take them off, and then some people will be, again, each one's different. But then maybe you follow up with birds, like chickens, or whatever it may be. Well, now you let them loose on that area. They're going to go find all those droppings, all that manure. They're going to scratch through that, which spreads it out. And so then what really is important, then you start getting all the dung beetles, all the insects, all of that. So they all come, they're breaking it down, making more topsoil.
Right.
While you're getting all that trampling from the cattle, because you're not taking off every piece of blade of grass on that part of the land. So now essentially have like think of the rainforest. They always talk about like a canopy.
Yep.
It's that, just reduce that to small size. So now you have a canopy of trampled grass covering the soil, so that, in Texas, when it's getting to 105 every day.
Yeah.
What would that be? 40 every day, 40 plus every day.
Yeah, that's hot.
Now the soil is, if you have bare soil, well, that soil may mean, gosh, could get up to 130 plus degrees.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got topsoil and you've got that canopy cover, it may be 80.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff can live at that.
Sure.
And so it's just this really amazing cycle of using nature. And this is where the, you know, on one hand, you can say like humans screw everything up and, you know, or all that. But this is where, even though it's like cleaning up your own mess, where, you know, typically like, I don't quote me on the numbers, but I think it takes like 500 years to make like an inch of topsoil just in nature.
Mm.
Well, these guys are doing, these ranchers are doing it where, I mean, they're doing 1 or 2 inches a year through these processes. And so they're able to make new topsoil, which allows for more organic carbon matter, which sequesters carbon. You know, if you wanted to, again, however you feel about climate change, it is bringing carbon down in. So now they've got more carbon, they've got more nitrogen, they've got all these elements that are pro-life.
Yeah.
And now, again, it's just a cycle that keeps improving on itself. And so it's really cool. I got super into it, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I've always followed it. And this is my part of my passion, you know, whatever you want to call it, passion, desire, was to create this because I don't have a ranch and I'm not doing those things. So how can I support the people who are doing that, who are doing the right things? And the more products we can get like that, the more people, the more ranchers we can get doing that, all that's a cycle too, because they need somewhere to sell it to so that people can consume it, so that more people, more ranchers will be brought in and start practicing those principles.
So how are you going to get this into people's hands?
Well, in the beginning, right now, I'm, you know, so far I've been bootstrapping it myself, which I can tell you how we've done that, which is an interesting way to go about it. But yeah, I mean, it's right now I'm doing strictly direct to consumer. The goal is to, again, support, hopefully align myself with people and companies who already have an audience, but have a similar mindset and mission. There's a few, I'll tell you off air, a few that I've been talking with just because, you know, I'm not ready to say that. But it's just going to events, going to TAC events, going to tactical events, archery events, jiu-jitsu events, just going to places where I think obviously carnivore, keto, any of that stuff, and just getting out there in front of people and letting them try it. Because I think I'm very optimistic with the response so far that once people have it, they're going to see that it's unlike the other sticks they've had. And I've got a pretty good hit rate once I can get someone to try it. So it's just going to be a matter of numbers.
Well, having a consumable as a product is brilliant. I mean, that's why so many people get into the coffee world, and because there's something that people desire and they'll buy more of and over again, rather than a one and done, I bought it and I'm done. But having an edible consumable also, I would think, would open up a lot of different doors on liability.
Sure.
How do you navigate that? How do you navigate that whole, because I'm sure the FDA and all these, there's probably a bunch of different hoops to be jumping through. And
yeah, it's a lot of, you know, obviously this isn't my background. And so there's certainly a learning curve, which is part of that 2 years it's taken to get to here. The short answer is basically we've got what's called a co-packer or a manufacturer that we work with that has all of the permits and processes and all that already in place. They've been doing this for a while. And then you just have to source from, you know, the places you source from matter, and they've got to have all of their paperwork and all that as well. So that's kind of like a short, makes it sound very simple answer.
Yeah.
Is, you know, like, for example, I can't, like, I've got an idea for a steak that will be a wild pig with pork fat. I can't just go out and like shoot a pig and then take
Right.
it and, sell it as this.
Yeah, because of market hunting and all the laws around that.
Right. So, but what I can do, in at least, down in the U.S. and in Texas especially, is you can trap these wild hogs and then take them while they're still alive to a USDA processing facility plant. They can kill them and process them in the plant, and then it's okay.
That's not too bad.
No.
You're helping everyone then.
Sure. But as far as like whitetail, I won't be able to, like venison,
Sure.
I won't be able to do because the states own them. And that's why a lot of, I call these American meat sticks because I'm sourcing from U.S. ranches. That puts limitations on us. A lot of places will ship from New Zealand. If they're trying to do like a grass-fed and finished,
okay.
New Zealand has a really good infrastructure for processing organs, and also if you want venison or elk, stuff that the state doesn't, that the U.S. doesn't own, that's where they get it from.
Got it.
And again, there's nothing wrong with those meats at all if they're like they're certainly there's differences everywhere, but a regeneratively sourced U.S. cow versus a regeneratively sourced New Zealand cow,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah, I hear you.
My personal thoughts on this is just I wanting to keep dollars in the U.S., wanting to support American ranchers before ranchers from other countries.
There's a lot to be
Again,
said for that.
Not saying that they're bad at all.
No.
But just I'd rather source it from the U.S. than somewhere else and keep the dollars here and really support the ranchers and the people on the land who are kind of deserve all the credit that are doing raising animals the right way. It's just that. It's like, how do I support the regenerative movement? How do I support the U.S.? Again, this is nothing in the grand scheme of things, but, it's still those decisions. And I think that if we can kind of on a higher level, if we can show that we can do it, maybe that will inspire other people to start making choices that's similar.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. So.
Yeah. And just to circle back a little bit, one of the interesting things I think you're talking about, which is, I think could be brilliant, is the marketing strategy of that first hunt, of taking people out and doing, having them connect with nature, whether they're successful on a hunt or not, right? I mean, if you're going for something that's fairly abundant, that increases the likelihood, but having your own media company to be able to generate an interest in whether they buy the product or not,
Right.
at least that ethos of what you're trying to do is getting communicated. I think that's a really, really smart way to be able to grow a business out, is to look at that ethos, look at what you're trying to do, and have other people with both similar mindsets that see things in a similar way, as well as opposing mindsets.
Yeah.
Because maybe you learn something and it's like, I never really looked at it like that. And I learned something. Or maybe they learned something and they can go back into their community and just say, you know what, I used to think like this, but now I'm starting to think like over here. I think that's a great way to be able to market it.
Thank you.
And it'll be fun, right?
It'll be a lot of fun, man, because that's, selfishly, I love doing that. It's like I love being out. I love sitting in a bow stand. I love sitting in a blind.
Yeah.
I love walking around looking for animals. And even if you don't, I always tell people the actual, killing of an animal is a very small part of the whole.
It's a fraction of a second.
Yeah, it's a fraction of a
right?
section. But, there's so much cool stuff about it that I think, and even about guns, especially in the U.S., we've got all these mass shootings, it seems like, every week. And so I certainly get the negativity towards guns. I think it's way more the pharmaceutical and mental health stuff, but, maybe that's a debate for another day. But I think being able to show show this stuff in a positive light, there's something to that. And even if people disagree, I'm fine if people disagree. They're just like, oh, I've chosen not to eat meat because whatever.
Yeah.
If they're cool about it and can have a conversation about it. Obviously, there will be differences of opinion, all that, but as long as you can have a conversation, all right, cool. It's the people that on both sides that and really with anything, Republican, Democrat, trans, like all this stuff going on today, it's like if you can't have a conversation and if you can't sit at the table with someone who thinks differently than you, then that's something that probably you need to address rather than blaming them for.
Yeah, people I see are starting to clue into that in a broader sense. For a long time, for the last many years now, if you and I have opposing thoughts, generally how our society has structured it is us against them,
right.
You against me.
Yeah.
You don't like XYZ? Well, I don't like you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you're an idiot.
Right. Totally. As opposed to, I don't agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm open to hearing it. Guess what? I still don't agree with you.
Yeah.
But I don't dislike you as a person. Like, you're not a bad guy, right? Yeah. Just because we have an opposing thought. And people would say that it's, from a political standpoint, it's really good to be able to polarize people. Yeah. So you can set up camps. Who was it? What his name's escaping me. He's lectured on and books on essentially using media to control people. I've got his book on my bedside table right now, damn it. It's okay. Anyways, it'll come to me. But it's a very powerful tool to be able to motivate people in one way or another. What people start to lose sight of is the fact that they are being manipulated. And then all of a sudden they start questioning absolutely everything, and maybe things that they shouldn't be questioning, right? That are otherwise self-evident, and they've lost their sense of standing and bearing as to where things are at.
Well, sorry to cut you off. I think that team aspect is why we see so much of why the extremes seem to be getting more extreme and louder. Mm-hmm. And kind of my kind of thought process and my bet with our marketing for us is that there's 90% of the people that are in the middle, not as loud and not as extreme. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I think most situations probably are. It's just the loudest people have the microphone and make the most noise.
Yeah. A lot of people are indifferent, right?
Yeah.
Like push come to shove, they've got ideas on it, but they're not the ones that are out there at the rooftop screaming.
Right.
The shootings that you're talking about earlier, which is an interesting thought when you talk about regenerative farming, when you talk about hunting, when you talk about sort of a closer connection with your food and with nature. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, have you heard of them? Mm-mm. Okay, so he's written a few books on killing, on combat, and most recently one he co-authored with a couple of Canadians called On Hunting.
Okay.
And he's been on the podcast here, but his initial claim to fame was on killing, and it was studied and looked at, and people would use it in the universities, and people would pick it apart, and other people would get right behind it. But some of his ideas are that people become disconnected with death and with nature to a point where everything's hidden behind closed doors. You get your food, it comes nicely wrapped up.
Yeah,
right?
Gotcha. And okay.
You go to a funeral and it's going to be closed coffin, right? And there's a disassociation. And then he combines in like media and video games and the glorification of violence and further disassociating this concept of knowing where your food comes from, which I thought was an interesting one that he points out, has greater social ramifications on everybody if they have a more intimate relationship with life and death.
Sure.
I might have more respect for you as an individual in the same way that I've got more respect for the food that I'm eating on my plate, knowing that this thing had life and it's lived, and I'm not going to just waste it now. Maybe if I'm full, I'll put some away in the fridge. It's not going in the bin. because I've got a greater appreciation as where this animal came from if I hunted it.
Yeah.
In the same way that life and death, school shootings, mass shootings, all the rest, is more humanized. Was part of the argument that Dave Grossman has put forward. I thought that's an interesting approach. It was just something that you brought up.
Yeah, so it's saying that if people had more exposure to life and death, in theory, there would be less issues down the road and maybe less shootings.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what he's saying. If they have a greater appreciation for the value of a life.
Sure. I don't disagree with that. I mean, I've told quite a few people that, I think a way to, again, it's not the only way, but I think a way and a very big bang for the buck would actually be to put guns in kids' hands, and even if it's a BB gun.
Sure.
I'm not talking about like an AR or anything, but like maybe.
Maybe
maybe not. So, I think if we... I remember reading something about, God, it was years ago, but it was talking about like pornography.
Sure.
And where it's, in the U.S., it's kind of, I'm not sure how it is here, but, in the U.S., sex is still kind of like a taboo thing, or at least when I was growing up.
Sure.
And, it's like, it was uncomfortable. It's like there weren't any topless beaches. So like there was that whole thing. And, and in Europe, it was very different.
Yeah.
The relationship to it. And over there, even though there were, to like use the topless beaches as an example, just that exposure and kid, your mom's doing it probably. Like there just wasn't a weird thing about it. And so, but over there they were people were losing their virginity later. There was like less cases of, extramarital or outside of the relationship pregnancies. People had less partners, all of these things. And it was essentially because the exposure of just like, hey, it's like nudity's not this big deal. Like, chill out.
Yeah. But marketing 101, create scarcity.
Yeah.
Right?
And so, but that was very different than in the U.S. where obviously we were hiring all those stuff. And I think even though there are a ton of guns in the U.S., there's still... I would feel way safer around a bunch of people who have been around guns their whole life.
Yeah.
Than I would without.
I'm sure you've heard the expression, an armed society is a polite society, right?
Absolutely.
And I've talked to another guy who was with NATO, and he was like, you haven't been to this place or that place, and I wholeheartedly disagree. And fair enough, he's got his perspective and he's got his reasons behind it. But from the standpoint of exposure, like scarcity creates demand, right? And
right.
You want something, make it the forbidden fruit. You hide these guns away from the kids, they can't see it, right? You make everything taboo, and then that's what everybody's going to want. Like, what's this interesting thing over here? We do training here. We do training with all ages, and we work with local clubs and youth organizations and scouting groups. And I think it was 2 days ago we got an email. Basically, it was, "How dare you? You should be ashamed of yourself," right?
Sure.
And we're looking at this thing. He's like, "How dare you? These are killing instruments, and you're putting them in the hands of a child." And the office responded back and says, "Well, this is safety training for individuals who have families that have firearms in the house, and this is government safety training and goes through A, B, C, D, and talks about laws and handling and just demystifies the whole process. Like, how is that education and that safety training a negative thing, right?"
Sure.
And they come back, "No, how dare you? I've been with you. I've been a member for X amount of time, and I can't believe it," right?
Yeah.
There's always going to be those types, but
Sure.
I agree with you. Normalizing a process and having a societal standard around it will I think will have a much more positive effect. Look at Switzerland. Every household's got guns in it.
Yeah.
Do you hear about Swiss mass shootings all the time? No.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, because it's been normalized. They've been trained. They have rules. They have things they have to do, but it's not the forbidden fruit.
I mean, any time you can be educated on something that has those kind of consequences is good. And
Sure.
anytime you have exposure to things that you're not, it's like exposure and education are good.
Sure.
They're good things. And so,
It's like electricity is dangerous. Should we not teach our kids about electricity?
Even using me as an example is that, I mean, up until the last few years, I was terrified of handguns.
And
Why?
Why was that?
Because I didn't have any exposure or experience with them. I mean, I remember the first time I went to the gun range, shooting a rifle felt like the most natural thing in the world. I loved it. That same exact day, put the rifle down, go over. My buddy's hands me I think it was like a 9mm or something. He was like, "Shoot this now." I shot it once and put it down and was like, "Ooh, don't like that." And that's where I left it that first day. But enough. It stuck with me, and then I've essentially reached out to a buddy who's kind of similar to you and just had a ton of training, a ton of experience and all that. And I just told him, I was like, "Dude, I shot a handgun. It freaked me out. I don't know anything. Like, teach me."
Yeah, I don't like that feeling at all.
Yeah. And so I went and I did several lessons with him, and we obviously started with safety. And it's like, take the magazine out, make sure the clip's empty, here's the safety, all that. And you do that, and you put enough rounds through it, and it was like, okay, I still have a healthy fear of them, which I think you should always have, or a healthy respect.
Respect, yes.
Yeah, healthy respect for them. But I'm not like squeamish about it now.
Yeah.
And that to me, if you're doing that with kids, and again, it can be a BB gun, it can be a little BB gun pistol, like whatever it is, like if they understand the consequences and they understand how to be proficient around it. I'm not saying they need to be Jason Bourne or anything like that, but if you can walk up to a gun and know the steps to go through of assume it's loaded, assume the safety's off, how do I make this safe? Great. They don't have to ever they don't ever have to pull the trigger after that. But like, as long as they know that, there's going to be a comfort level to it. And it just seems like a way better bitching about it and doing anything.
Nah,
so,
I hear you.
And all that. So
there's a proactive approach that can be taken.
Yeah. And should be taken.
Yeah.
Same reason people take self-defense classes and do jujitsu, and
same reason you wear a seatbelt. It's not because you plan to get in car accidents.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But if it does happen, guess what? I'm prepared.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to put links up in the bio for all of this so people can find it in your social media and your website. And
yeah, we're small and new. So, any Instagram follows, anything is greatly appreciated, and we'll be coming out with more content soon now that we've got the sticks. And right now you can only buy them on the website, but that's kind of where as we grow, you'll be able to find stuff on there.
I love it. Trevor, thank you so much for being on the Silvercore Podcast. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.